Cool. So let's jump into the intro to Flask. Um, Couple things before we start jumping into the Flask stuff itself. I posted a link to the repo in our channel, so if you want to follow along, that should have the intro code that we're going to start building off of today. And I'll push up some solution code afterwards when I post the video. First, I want to talk a little bit about how the internet works before we jump into making web stuff. So, and a lot of this is probably review since we've been doing it this entire time, but just to sort of uh, put things out there specifically. So we have been, except for last phase, for the first two phases, we've been working with just the client side. So we've been making requests to get stuff, to change information, to update stuff, delete stuff, all that. When we do that, we're using the HTTP protocol, redundant hypertext transfer protocol. We've been using HTTP. And HTTP is just a way to specify how these things talk to each other. Protocol is just a definition of how we talk to each other, like an API kind of for, I say, good morning. You say good morning. I say, how are you doing? You say fine. And that's our protocol, right? If you say something besides fine, it's a different protocol, or I might throw an error message. So we're using this protocol that specifies how we're talking back and forth between clients and servers. We've been using half of it, the talking to side, the sending requests. So now we're going to be handling the other side of it, the receiving requests and responding to them. Up to this point, we've been using JSON server and external APIs to handle that part. And so we'll talk about JSON server, right? JSON server is a server, like it says, that looks at, it uses a text file of JSON as a database, basically, and listens for get, post, put, patch, delete requests, does stuff with the data it has, and sends back a response. So what do these requests and responses look like? They have headers and they have bodies. Gets don't have bodies usually, ever, I don't think. But the headers are usually all the same. And we've seen making headers in our requests from JavaScript or React. We have a method that says, if it's get post whatever, well, we have a URL it's getting or URI. We have some, a bunch of header stuff to make it happen, like say it's JSON and stuff. And so that's one thing that the server receives to let it know, oh, what should I be doing? Pretty much, because that's what your request is. If you're sending a body along with it, that's some sort of data that it's also going to use to process that request. And then when it responds, it also sends headers and data back. The headers are going to the headers are going to have a response code in this case. Response codes, which we've gone through before, I think have 200s are things are pretty cool. 300s are something has changed somehow. We're going to redirect or whatever. 400s are you made a mistake, and 500s are I made a mistake. So and we'll see those as we go along. So how are we going to handle these requests? We're going to write a web servers or any kind of servers. They're just programs. They're just applications that we write. So in this case, we're just going to be writing a Python program, which you've been doing for the last 3 weeks. The only difference is we're going to have that program not only talk to the database and take user input from the command line, we're going to have it basically take its input from an HTTP request. And the main thing that kind of tells whether something is a server or not is basically, is it just listening on a port for communication? In the case of an HTTP server, it's listening on port 80 by default, but like we've done with the JSON server and React stuff, ports can be whatever you want. It's just a number. Yeah, but it's real easy to, especially if you just jump into like a tutorial on any kind of server, Rails or Express or Flask. It can seem kind of magical, but it's just a program that uses a programming language that listens for stuff and then looks at what it got and then does stuff. So that's what we're going to do here. And since we are using Python, one of the most basic Python web framework is Flask. And Flask it's not even a framework, it's a library. It's kind of like React is. It's basically a collection of stuff that makes writing that server easy for you. You can write a web server in plain old Python if you want to. I've definitely written web servers from scratch before in different languages. There's no reason to, because the main part is the same every time. Listen for stuff, pull apart the URL, look for the data, figure out, map the kind of request and the URL to some sort of function, and then put together a request and send it back somehow with the right headers and everything. It's not complicated necessarily. There are a lot of moving pieces. You can write it yourself. I don't recommend it because there's a lot of things to help you. And so Flask is the most basic way to get Python to do that. You're going to see a lot of stuff. I think there's a whole module in the curriculum about like WSGI and stuff like that. Python is really the only language that uses that. It's just a fancy way of saying like, we're going to be a web server somehow. And so that takes care of the requests, parsing, response sending stuff. Flask is the part that helps you basically map functions to the requests, and it provides a lot of support for SQL Alchemy and Alembic, I think. So we're going to be using them in basically the same way. It's just going to be a little bit different syntax because we're going to be working through Flask. Yeah, so that's the basics. You've been working with web stuff for a while. Does anyone have any questions, I guess, about like the overall fundamental thing that we are doing, or about like how Python's going to be doing that, or how we're going to be hitting it? Anything about any of that before we start actually building on it? Jason, did you have something? You're unmuted. Oh, okay. Thought you unmuted yourself for a question. Cool. Yeah, and we use the web every day so much, so we're probably pretty used to a lot of this stuff. So, yeah, I'm gonna go through. So we have this theater company app that one of our instructors built out, or one of our lecturers who's I think they are going back to get a computer science degree, and so they are no longer here, unfortunately. But there's a repo that they made to simulate to build out an application for a theater company, and that is linked in the I posted it in the channel there. So every day we'll just be building off of that code. Yeah. So Flask. the the fundamental thing that Flask is going to let us do is basically we do a little bit of configuration up front. Then the main actions we're going to be doing are writing functions. I think it calls them views, which is a little bit confusing. But they're basically functions with decorators, and the decorators say, hey, this is going to be a get for this URL. This is going to be a post at this URL. And then there's a function below that we write that takes that request and does something with it and returns stuff. So, and that's basically it. We'll start off just by kind of looking at the overall structure of that, and then we'll get into hooking up some SQL alchemy and stuff with it too. So if you have pulled that down, we're going to be in the first branch there, the intro to Flask, I think it's called. And actually, let me pop it open here, and we will talk through some of what it is. Let me hit the share screen button if I can find it. It's the bright green one that's always there. Cool as that. Let me pop up in chat. Okay, cool. You got that. Faces over there. Hide the thing. Cool. And so here we are. Oh, one intro to Flask. Cool. So this is what we're going over. Cool. Yeah, that's all doable. So let's take a look at this application file. One of the things that it says we are going over. Yeah, Christian, what do you have? You have a question?
Yeah, just making sure. I don't know if it's just me. Maybe I forked the wrong one, but on mine doesn't have the server folder with the apps in the pip file. Is that is downloaded wrong?
Are you in the O1 example starter intro to Flask branch?
I don't have that O1 into the Flask. Maybe I just downloaded the wrong one.
Yeah, are you on that branch? Do you have that branch?
I'm on Flask Theater Company. Did I just get the wrong one?
Yeah, no, that's the right one.
You have to uncheck a box when you're forking it
Oh,
to
there, now
get
it's
all the
unstuck here.
branches too. Otherwise, you'll just get the main branch. That's
Yeah.
Oh,
what I was just talking about.
okay, for sure. I'll get that set up while you continue the lecture.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I should have said that explicitly. Sorry about that. Cool. So, this is some stuff we're gonna do. The it's there. I took a skim through the curriculum, and there's a part on how to initialize. Is it here? Is it how to initialize a Flask application? And it doesn't do that. But it does it from the we've already got Flask set up part. So the code like in that lab has it has our pip file and all that stuff that brings in everything. But it doesn't say like how to do it from scratch. That's how I interpreted that. If you go to the find the is there a Flask? Yeah, here we are. Installation. Yeah, if for some reason, and there are lots of good reasons, to start your own Flask application, and there might be a template for the project, but either way is great. And when you do your own, you probably want to make your own. It's pretty easy. You basically create a little environment and do pip install Flask, and then do your pip env, all that stuff. Do your what did it say? Yeah, you do your pip env install and then all that. So you have all these things installed. So these are just packages, Flask, SQL Alchemy, the yeah, that's all we really need. All the stuff, all the other stuff is stuff that supports this. Faker we may not use, we'll see. But yeah, so Flask is again just this package. So let's start walking through what we want to do here. Hey, I did that part. Check. Cool. Navigate to models py. Sure. Yeah, for some reason, I think the walkthrough that it wants us to follow has a set of models before we do anything else. That's interesting, but I'd like to talk about the Flask part first. So there are a bunch of different web frameworks for servers in Python. There's a bunch of different frameworks in a lot of different languages. Some have a lot of setup and fiddly configuration. They're usually older ones. Flask, unfortunately, I think is one of those. We, we used to teach Rails, and Rails was just like, do Rails new, and that's it. There's no additional configuration. Express is kind of the same way. There's not a lot of manual setup to do, but with Flask, we do have to do a little bit of manual setup, just because it is a very, very minimal framework library. There's other Python ones. Django is one. What's the other one that's like, they've got computer library names that use different models and have different setups. But we're going to do some setup here. So we're going to actually, let me see. Yeah. So I'll leave that check mark up there. To get Flask working, it's a module, so we need to import it. And so we can just do from lowercase, from Flask, import. And Flask is part of, if you go to the Flask website, it's part of a project called the Pellet Project, or Pellets Project, I think, that has a bunch of Python basic tools incorporated with it. And Flask brings in all of them, I think, or most of them. So we're going to bring in a couple here. So we're going to need Flask for starters, at least. From Flask, import Flask. Oh, you know what I didn't do? I did not do our... Didn't do that. Yes, I would. Thank you. From Flask, import Flask. So that's what I want. Did we not do that? Resolved, missing imports. Oh no, that nothing's gonna work if that doesn't work. File. Why did it blow that away? Oh, good time. Let me see.
There's another pip file above the README,
Oh, there we
but I
go.
also had that same thing happen during the labs and it is
Oh,
still working, so I don't know what.
yeah, I need to go into that directory. That will do it. Let me get rid of that just so. Yeah, so go into the actual project directory and do your pipm install. There we go. There's actually things to install there. So that'll take a second. So we're going to import Flask, and make sure it all gets in before we go on. Should have done this beforehand. Cool. Do we have Flask now? Could not be resolved. From Flask. Nope, still doesn't like it. Why not? Oh, do I need to do pip and shell first? What do I need to do here? Oh, you know what? I think when I did that other one, it decided to put me in that environment. That's why. Let me close this out and see. Oh, that's the same one. No. I think it's going to complain unless let me quit out of this and go back in. Hey, there we are. Cool. Actually, let me go into here and code from there. Yeah, Python virtual environments, notoriously finicky. Yeah, I don't want to do that. Cool. Let's try this again. Hey, now we got it. Great. So now it's using our virtual environment here. Fantastic. Yeah, because I'd started it from the outer directory, which wasn't part of the environment. Python. Cool. We're probably going to import a couple other things from here, but let's just import Flask right now. We're going to need to import this Flask migrate as well. And you can see all the fun stuff from Flask migrate import the T migrate. And from models, we need to import stuff from there. And oh, that's why we wanted to do models first. You know what? I'm gonna leave that as a note there. We did these things. I'm just going to note we'll import the models after we make them. Because you actually don't need any database hookup or any models or anything like that to make Flask work at all. Flask is again super minimal. Yeah, and let's take a look at what that looks like. So I'm just going to. So I want to talk about. So on a sort of higher level, we're gonna mostly be working in kind of like with React. It has the, it creates the React application and attaches it to a div or whatever, and then we go down into our components and start building off of there. There's kind of a similar thing going on here, where we're going to create the Flask application by calling it from here. And then we'll be attaching all sorts of stuff to that. Yeah, Christian, did you have another question?
Yeah, real quick, sorry. How did you get Flask to import again? I'm having the same issue.
I had to quit out and then open it back from that 01 intro to Flask directory.
All right, I did that, but there's still an issue.
Did you do pipenv install from there?
Yes, I did.
That should do it.
We don't need to now get to the shell, do we?
I my VS Code is set up to do that automatically. If yours is not, you may need to.
Well, I'm in the shell either way. So. Let me exit out of it and go back.
Yeah, just make sure you're going into the 01 intro to Flask directory.
And then just run the code dot.
And then run code dot from there. And that should. And then if you did the pipenv install from that directory, then you should be good.
Here's hoping it works. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. Cool. So let's set up our Flask app. I'll do it from right up here. So we're just going to do exactly what it says here. So basically, Flask needs a name to call it. It doesn't really matter what it is. Since we're going to be running this as our application, our the name is just going to be main. So it's going to be Flask main, basically. But it could be anything. I think the reasoning is that you could potentially be running more than one. I don't think we're ever going to be doing that, so this is going to be fine. I'm not going to set up our database stuff. I just want to demonstrate what Flask does by itself without the database stuff. So yeah, we'll do all that. So right now we're just getting Flask. We're just saying, hey, start up a Flask application. And yeah, so routes. Well, this is interesting numbering. I'll probably RNC that does more stuff. So routes are going to be the sort of heart, the lifeblood of our application. Routes are the thing that we're using to say, so if we just start up Flask, it's going to be listening for requests. Right now, we don't have any way to handle requests, so it'll take whatever requests and probably not return anything. It'll probably just hang. Actually, don't know what it'll do if you don't do any of that. It'll probably return an error that says it doesn't have any URLs defined yet, like a 404 or something like that. So we're going to be defining, most of our work is going to be defining routes. And I don't necessarily want to make a comparison to React Router, but uses the same sort of philosophy. Let's just type through and I'll talk through what it does. So app is our app. We're going to be writing using a decorator here. You can see by the little @ sign. Python people call it a pi for some reason. I don't understand. It's an @ sign. So, and remember, a decorator is just a function that takes the function below it and runs it through there. So route is the decorator. It just happens to live in our app that we defined here. So app is actually an instance of the Flask class. And that gives us a bunch of cool stuff. One of which is the route function, which we can use as a decorator. Route function takes a path and says, hey, if someone hits this, or so if someone makes a request with this URL relative to our server, do the thing that you say to do. We are going to be running on a local port. And I think we need to, yeah, we do need to set that up outside. We'll do that in just a second. So we're going to be listening for someone to hit the route of our server, and we're just going to define a function. You can call it index, I guess. Yeah. It really doesn't matter what you call the functions here, as long as they're descriptive. It just matters that there's a function there to run through that decorator. So we're going to do index, and we're just going to return a string. Hey, what's up? Cool. So we've written a Flask application. Hooray. So it's not running yet. We do have to do a couple little fun things here. Wow, yeah, I'm always a little bit stunned sometimes. So we need to do some configuration in the terminal. We need to tell our shell environment what's the deal. I think in a real application, you're going to be defining these in a config file. I don't remember off the top of my head how to do that in Flask, but we'll definitely do that later on. So I'm just going to set some environment variables here. If you're not familiar with environment variables in the shell, at your shell, you can just type env, and wow, well, you get a bunch of these are set up. This is where it looks for applications, where my home directory is, all the stuff, where my NVM stuff is set up, what my cursor looks like. It's a hamburger. So we're going to be setting one of these environment variables that just sort of lives in the shell, or a couple of them actually. And the way you do that in Bash, or I think it's C# is we'd say export, because that's what we do. So these specific environment variables, Flask looks for to know what program to run and what port to run on. So we're just going to set it to app.py. So it knows that it's going to be running the app. That's going to be our main. And we need to tell what port to run on, just like you would do it for JSON server or whatever. Flask run port. And you can say any number. It's using 555 here. You can use whatever you want. 4567. Yeah, we'll stick with what it says here. Pick your 4 favorite numbers and do that. Cool. So I'm not going to do the database initialization stuff yet. I just want to see what this looks like here. So we've created our route. I'm going to get rid of that. So let's go ahead and start it up. So we're going to, actually, let me show you I know it doesn't tell you to do that there. We're going to start up Flask. And I don't think it says how to do it here, right? Well, the way you do it, there's a couple ways to do it. Again, this is just because Python, there's more than one way to do it. This is just a Python program. So we have at the end, not commented, but we would, see, that's where we do the port. I'm going to do it that way instead. That's way better. So, well, I'll show you the way that we're supposed to do it, and then we can do this way later. This is just a Python program. So this is the thing you put in Python programs to say, hey, run this part, right? And in this case, it would say app run with this port with a one of the debug flags. Oh, yeah. But we're going to do it with Flask itself. And so we can just say Flask run. And if everything works right, this should start up our server on port 5555. Could not import app. Awesome.
I think you have to go into the server directory.
Oh, yep, you are right. There we go. Flask run. Hey, there we go. So now our server is running and we have this little console here that tells us what's going on. So it's running on localhost, which is 127.0.0.1 always. So we can actually just go right here. I bet. Let me set up a new window. So we have something here. Cool. And I can just go to localhost 1, 2, 3, 4, and we should get, hey, what's up? Awesome. So we did it. We built a web application. Phase over. And we can see that here's our log. You're gonna be looking at your logs a lot here, your console, because that's where errors are gonna show up too. But it's also good for tracing out like, oh, when I hit this route, this is what I got. Never worry about the favicon. Favicon is the thing that makes the little picture in your location bar. For some reason, Flask doesn't put that in automatically. You can like touch favicon if you want, but you don't need to. So right here, we're doing get. We're saying here's our request, get slash. We're using HTTP and we're getting a 200 back from it. So that means everything's okay. Yeah, so that's, I mean, that is your basic hello world Flask application. What questions do we have up to this point? None. Awesome. Cool. Sweet. So we're just gonna be writing a bunch of routes that hook into things for the Flask application part. We're also gonna need to do all the SQL alchemy stuff that we've been doing before. We're just gonna hook it up through Flask. So let's go set up that part now. First, we are going to go set up that models, set up those models, and the way we're going to do that is models. Yeah, Flask doesn't really do MVC that much. A little bit. Basically, like we were doing before in SQL Alchemy. I wish there was a shorter way to say that. Squaw, also bad. SQL. Yeah. So our model is going to be the objects that are attached to the database through the ORM that we are using. So we can not write raw SQL all the time. Model view controller pattern. I guess, it kind of uses it. Our models are our ORM models hooked to the database. Models, yeah, it really doesn't use that pattern. So our views, they call our functions here views, which kind of, a view is basically a way to look at a model. Kind of fits there. When we start hooking the models, it'll be there. And our controllers are basically the verbs that hook those up. So our verbs in a pure MVC situation, our controllers are our verbs. Our controllers are going to change the model somehow. When the model changes, it updates a view, and that view usually provides some UI to hit controllers with. Very, very loose comparison here. Don't sweat it too much. It's just a nerd thing. Cool. So let's go ahead and we have the thing. So we're importing Flask SQL Alchemy from SQL Alchemy. So SQL Alchemy has a SQL Alchemy 6 syllables. Why? From Alchemy, we are importing the specific library that hooks up that to Flask's stuff that we can go through there. And basically, we are instead of so the way we did it before, we kind of imported all the bits and pieces we needed individually. If we needed to import like a string or an integer or all those things, we would import them individually from Alchemy. In here, we're just creating an instance of it, and we'll just be using everything through there, which feels feels more object oriented, even if it isn't really. But it's a little bit cleaner, I think, and it's the idiom that is used most of the time when you're seeing this. So that's what we're gonna do. So let's go ahead and make a model, I guess. And I have some reference over here I'll be looking at because there's a lot of typing. But we're going to be creating this model. Remember, the application is for a theater company that has productions and actor. I don't remember exactly what the relations are, but definitely has productions. So we're going to make productions here. So let's just go ahead and make a model through SQL Alchemy. So we're going to make our class. That's going to be a production singular, right? Yeah, from yeah. Cool. So we're going to do what we did before. Only we're going to do it through this database, this DB object that we've got here. And we want to get it from model. Yeah, that's right. Cool. Cool. So we're just subclassing model from SQL Alchemy and creating this production class. Because it doesn't do any introspection, we have to tell it what the table name is manually. Is it 2? Yeah, it should be 2. And we're going to call it productions. Cool. Yeah, this is one of my quibbles with Flask is that we know what the class is. Python can look at itself and know what the name of the class is. It should be able to get the table name off of that, but oh well, we do it manually. Cool. So next up, let's do these columns here. Director, description. Oh, so many things. I'll do those too. Cool. Cool. So let's go ahead and add those there. And there's gonna be a lot of typing. So we're going to first it's gonna have an ID, right? Because it's a model, and this is gonna be our primary index. So we'll instead of importing column, we're just gonna use it through there. For some reason, it's not completing, but so this is gonna be an integer, and this is gonna be our primary key. Capital T true, yeah. Cool. So that's what we're gonna have in most of our models, like we do. So let's do title, string, budget, image, director, description, ongoing, created at. Great. So these are going to be created pretty much the same way. Title. Oh, this is gonna be a lot of typing. Title equals DB column. Why isn't it auto completing that? So weird. And we're gonna say that is a string, like that. We're gonna make a bunch of these. So let's do that. So a genre is gonna be a string. Budget is gonna be a float, which I disagree with, but we're gonna do that anyway. Image is gonna be a string. Description is gonna be director is gonna be a string. Description is gonna be a string. Float. Ongoing is a Boolean. Ongoing. Cool. And we have the created at and updated at. So created at means that this is going to automatically insert something when, well, we wanted to automatically insert this when it is created, so we know when it was created. And so this is going to be a date time. And we want to tell it when to do it automatically. So we can give it some parameters here or some options here. And the option we want to do is say server default. So create at is going to be, the database is going to know what to do with that. And we're going to use a function that we get from SQL Alchemy Flask func, and it's just going to be now. So when we create a new record, it's going to create this, and it's going to say create with the now whenever it is created. And we want to do the same thing here. Only now we want to say we want to give it a little on update hook here, and it's going to be now. So when the record updates, Flask SQL Alchemy is going to know to update this column with the current time. Great. Navigate to app UI. Thank you. Yeah, let's add the, I'm going to copy paste because I don't want to type anymore. There is a repr there. So that's just going to let us print out the string more easily when we get it. So, so there's our model. So to turn our model into the real thing, well, do I do that yet? Yeah, I don't know if we're going to do that yet. Let's go ahead and import our models. So we want to import our DB modalist, import production. Oh, and our DB. Let's do that first. Eric, yeah.
Yeah, could you post that repr into the chat?
Yeah, I absolutely can.
Oh, thank you.
Cool. So this is bringing in our SQL Alchemy instance, so we can use that to do all the things. And it's going to bring in our model that we just made it. So yeah, we need to do a couple things there. So we need to do these initializations. I'm not going to type these. Why would I? So we need to set up the so app again is our Flask application, our server. You can call it app, you can call it server, whatever you like. We're going to have it use the app DB database SQLite. So when we do our stuff, we're going to see app DB show up on the side there. And this is a legacy thing. We just need to include it so it doesn't do old stuff that breaks. I don't remember exactly what it does. If you there's a documentation on the Flask site that says what all these little flags do. I don't remember why we want to turn that off. Yeah, but it's just a thing you need to add because it's a thing. Yeah, that's just Flask configuration stuff. And we want to have it migrate our database here. Yeah, cool. So that's going to, we imported that from Flask migrate, and that's just going to say when we start up the server, make sure our database is where it's supposed to be. And then finally, I'll type this one out because it's so exciting. We're going to use the DB that we imported, and we are going to init app. And we're going to give it the application that we made here. So migrate is a class, and this is a class. We're creating the migration here. We're creating it with our server and with the database that we got from the other module, and then we're going to initialize that database with the app. And basically, that's just giving that SQL Alchemy instance a reference to our application, so it can do stuff with it. Great. Oh yeah, now we got to do all this stuff. I should have CD'd into the server folder before. I'm gonna stop it right now. So we have all our stuff here in the server folder. Now we're gonna do our little auto generate. We set the Flask app on the run port. Now we need to create our database. So let's do it through Flask. So Flask is, it's not just the server itself, but Flask has all of these helper things hooked up. If you look at Rails, Rails has a similar thing or uses Rake. Java has used to use Ant. I don't know what it does now, but most frameworks have some thing that you will run. Express uses Express to do a lot of helper stuff that you could do otherwise, but this keeps everything nice and tidy. We're going to initialize our database. Great. Creating directory, generating, cool, great. So here is our, I just saw something happen over here. What was it? Nope. Cool, let's go. We initialize our database. Now we're going to auto-generate our thing. We're going to give it a message. So again, we're doing the same thing we would do with SQL Alchemy. We're just doing it through Flask. It's going to generate our migration. Hopefully it does it right. We can see in here, if we look at this, great, here's the migration that's created for us. And we can see it's creating our column here. Right, looks like it did all that right. Again, the auto migrate usually pretty good. Best to check it. I think everything looks good here. I'm happy. And now we're going to run a migration. Blammo. Cool. So now we get, oh, it doesn't, it's doing the in-memory version, isn't it? We're not gonna actually see, are we actually gonna see it? I don't know, maybe. Review the database. Oh, there we are, there it is. So we should be able to, if we have the right thing installed. Open anyway, nope. I thought I had the viewer installed. No, I guess not. Funny. I'm just install it real quick. SQLite. There we go. Yeah, it's installed. Why aren't you working?
I think if you right click the database and hit open database or something like that's the first option on the drop down. App.db.
Oh yeah, maybe I have click the right one. I'll do it. Open database. There we go.
Yeah, and then it'll pop up at the bottom left.
Now we can explore it. Here we are. And there's our productions. And it has all the stuff in it. Great. And there's nothing in it yet because we haven't done any seeds. Cool. We reviewed the database. Done and done. Check. So yeah, I bet these steps are in seed. So yeah, like I was saying, a lot of fiddly setup and configuration. There's, unless like your job is creating new Flask applications every day, this is something that you'll look up every time for sure, or make a little cheat sheet checklist. I just happen to have it here in the comments. I'm the kind of person that works really good with checklists. When I have to do something, just go through those steps. I think those are good as long as you know what all the bits and pieces do. I've seen too many times people using checklists and they don't understand what they do. My first job out of college, one of the tasks was running payroll stuff on an old Wang system, and there was literally just like a piece of paper taped to the monitor, and you would like type in these commands, and if one didn't work, you just had to like clear everything and start over again because nobody actually knew what they did. Like one person did, I think. So I would recommend make a checklist that does all the stuff we're talking about here. Understand what everything does, and just make sure you get every step on there. Because again, another failing that I have with checklists is forgetting one step that is quote unquote obvious, and then nothing works. So yeah, or just do this 100 times and get it in your bones. And of course, this is all, it's in this repo, but it's also on the Flask website. It walks you through a lot of stuff too. They have relatively good documentation. Great. End of rant. Let's go to the seeds. So this should be familiar. All the stuff we're doing, basically the same stuff that we did with SQL Alchemy again. Again, this is just Python. It's nothing magic. So we can use whatever Python tricks we want to do. We can use Faker. We can get it. We can have it open up a CSV file and import the data from there. All sorts of things. Application context. Yeah. Let's go through our setup here. From this Dutch. Cool. So we are importing our server from the server file so that it knows the server we're going to be working with. And same from models. We're going to import our database instance and our production model. And then we're going to do the same thing. So this seed file is what's going to run. You know this part already. You've already done this. And it's going to put all the things in our stuff. Put all the stuff in our thing. But I think this part is new. So Flask, or the palettes projects, has a thing called context, which is confusing because React also has a thing called context. And also it is an English word that means something similar to what it does, but not exactly. Basically what it is it is creating kind of a context in your application that it holds, it's almost like scope, but not exactly. Yeah. But basically you're creating context for this section of the application, so that it's, and it uses it in a different way than other context does too, I think, because you're usually doing it in a from. Yeah, but we're creating this context so we can do the seed, basically, is the short version. Oh, and we are doing with okay, cool. So basically this is creating a block, basically. And you can take a gander at the documentation later on, or right now if this is boring, which it kind of is. Cool. So we are going to seed our database. Before we seed our database, we want to make sure it is empty, so we don't just have a billion records of the same thing repeated over and over again. So we're going to do a query on production. So we're going to say production query, and we are just going to say delete. I think that is, yeah. So this should just delete everything from the database. So we're starting fresh. And create some seeds for production and commit them to the database. I am going to copy and paste those because there's no reason you should watch me type all that. So basically what we're doing here is, and it's in a weird kind of way, but it's doing it. So we're creating a bunch of these. So we're making an array. We are creating a bunch of these production models with the title, genre, director. I don't think that's the director, that's the author. Description, budget, image, and whether it's ongoing or not. Yeah, always ongoing. So we created those, we appended each one to the productions, and now we can just commit all of them all at once. By doing, we have to get the session, yeah, session from the D. We're going to add all, and we're just going to give it productions. And then we need to commit. And again, this is stuff that you have been doing for the last 3 weeks. So this shouldn't be great. So let's go ahead and run this. Thanks for all that instructions. Cool. So again, this is literally just a Python program. So we're just going to run it with Python. Yep. Oh, I ran into this problem before. I think we don't need to import it here. Yeah, we don't need it in it there. Pretty sure that's it. Closer. What's our error? Type error. Budget is an invalid keyword argument for production. Did I spell it wrong? Budget there, our models. Budge. Cool. Great. Let's rerun that migration stuff again. Boom. Upgrade, and I bet we're gonna get so this is the cool thing about migrations. We don't have to blow away the entire database and start over again, because it's just changing the name. It's not creating everything again. And so, and I'm sure you talked about this before in the SQL Alchemy stuff, but when you're working with a bunch of people, it's good to have all these changes tracked, and let you go forward and back steps, because they're going to be checked into into Git or whatever, and so you should be able to roll back the database to the state it was at when whatever code was using it is there. So migrations, big fan. And let you recover from stuff like that. So let's see if our seeds work now. Very close. Let us fix that typo. And look. Okay, one more time. There we go. Cool. And now we should be able to look into our database here, our productions. And there we are. There's all our stuff. Great. Sweet. So this is all the SQLite stuff that we know. Oh yeah, this is a cool thing that Rails has, but I don't think a lot of other web frameworks have. You can run Flask shell. That'll drop you into a Flask shell, where it basically gives you access to all the stuff that the server has access to. So if we can do a query on production, query, no, not callable, production query, all, is it? Yeah. So we can interact with our models here and make sure things are working. You can do first, let's get the first one there. and we can add stuff, delete it, update it, read it, write it. So this is a really easy way to debug your models and stuff from the context of this app. So yeah, Flask shell is pretty cool. I'm again big fan of that. And I generally like Flask in general. It's about the it's about the level of granularity that I prefer. Different people have different opinions. Some people like it to be a lot crunchier and low level. Some people like it more abstracted. This feels like about the right level to me once you get everything set up and start working with this part here. We did all that part. Yeah. That part should be most of the review, just in a slightly different context. Do you have any questions about how we did any of that, or why we did any of that, mostly? Cool. Been talking for about an hour, which leaves just a little bit more, and hopefully that'll do us good. I think there's not much more to do. Yeah, great. Oh yeah, I didn't show you this. This is pretty nice and something you're gonna be using again. You can control D on the shell. If you do Flask run with, I think it's two. Yeah, if you do a dash debug, it will reload when you change the files. So you don't need to, so I can do, get back to our browser here. So, hey, what's up? So I should be able to change it. I have autosave or save on unfocus on my VS Code. So it's going to save it when I go over to the other window. So I can just make a change, go back over to the browser and reload here. And it should give me the new thing, which is fun. So we can make changes without reloading. If you don't run it in debug mode, you have to stop it and start it. So this, I'm a big fan of anything that makes the production cycle quicker. So this is the cool thing here, making a dynamic route. You can create a route. You can create a route that can take parameters basically on the URL, which is going to be super helpful when we start doing RESTful stuff. So I'm going to use our decorator. Oh, and I'm just going to type stuff. What is there? I'm going to use the route for productions. And here I'm going to put in, yeah, Saki.
Sorry, what was the command again for debugging?
Oh, it is do Flask run dash debug.
Flask run. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Cool. So instead of just putting in a URL, we can put stuff in brackets and say what type of thing it is and give it a variable name, basically. So now inside the function that we write here, so I'm going to call it, we'll call it productions. We can actually take in this parameter as a title, this title as a parameter, and we can mess with it. So we can return a formatted string that looks like, here's our, yeah, H1, sure, why not? Cool. So if we go back to our browser here, we can say productions, and we can give it a title like Hamlet. Hey, and it changes. So we can say better Hamlet. Hey, better Hamlet. So this is the way that we're going to be interacting with it a lot of the times when we do our when we're interacting with resources, whether we're getting stuff or changing it or whatever. So you're going to be doing this a lot. This feels like a nice way to do it. You'll see this kind of functionality in other frameworks. They all have their own syntax, of course, but this is the way Flask does it. pretty sweet. Cool. So we have that route there that just prints the production or title back again. Hey, thank you for reminding me. So I'm going to import a couple other things from Flask, JSONify, and make response. JSONify, as the name implies, turns an object into JSON or a dictionary or whatever you call them. Make response is also going to do exactly what it says. It's going to make a proper response instead of just returning a string. So we're going to make a response with a header and information and all that stuff. Cool. So I'm not going to review status codes. It's boring. 200 okay, 400 you fucked up, 500 we fucked up. We're going to return a status code with this one to say it's okay, and that's our 200 code. But yeah, so we have access to our production, right? Because we imported it here. So let's go ahead and use it. So instead of just returning the title, we can use that information to query our database. And this is the start of the fun part after an hour and change in. And right, production resources are singular and rest. So I'm going to grab our production. I'm just going to do our query on production. I'm going to filter for the production title and make sure it matches this title here. And this will return us a list of everything that matches that, which will be useful in other contexts. Right now, we only want the first one because there's probably only one. Cool. So this will get us our thing. And if we go into Flask shell, we can do this query here. Flask shell. So I'm going to query, it's hard to see, query production query filter on production title equals title first, and that should give us, nope. Oh, it's already running, so it didn't do it. I need to go into server. Flask shell, there we go. Cool, so now I can do that query and name title is not defined. What? Oh, because because I don't have that. Let's do a query for let's do for Hamlet. Oh, I'll give it a let me give it a variable. Let's give it P. Why aren't you giving it P to me? Oh no, is it gonna bomb when I actually run it? Let's find out. I bet it is. Oh, we'll figure out what I did wrong when an error comes back. Cool. So in theory, this is going to get us our production by querying the database. Sweet. So now we're going to create a response object with it and or a dictionary here. So I'm going to say production response equals. And unlike in JavaScript and other languages, you have to put everything in quotes. And we'll only return this stuff. And we don't put a trailing comma there. Cool. So this is the object that we want to get back. Super brief aside. If you go out in the wild, you will see views being returned that are the pages. Maybe they're templated. We are only going to be looking at JSON responses here because we're going to be using our server as a RESTful API server. So we're only going to be returning JSON. We're not going to be returning HTML pages. You may see that in the future. Not here. Most modern applications have the front end and back end separated like that. So yeah, just keep that in mind. We're always going to be returning JSON, which is usually going to be in an object. So let's make the response. So we're going to give it a couple things. We're going to give it the production response here, but we're going to JSONify it. And that's going to turn that object into a string of JSON, which it's going to return. And we're going to give it our response code, which is 200, which means okay. Worry about that quote. Oh well. We'll find out what happens later. Cool. And so since we are I want to say this, since it's in the, so one of the things that Flask gives us here is this context again, and it's a little opaque because it's not explicit here, but I think this response should just come back because it is, we need to we'll return the response. Oh, you know what, actually I'm totally wrong. No, because it's not hooking into it here. Never mind, forget everything I just said. Totally wrong, because we're going to return the response. And in fact, I'm just going to do it here. So like we were returning a string up here, this is returning a full response with headers and everything. So let's just look at it. So I'm gonna look at productions with Hamlet, and it's gonna be lowercase because that's what our title is lowercase. We'll find out. Aha, none type has no attribute title. Great. So what we looked at in our shell was in fact true. Aha, it is it, capital H. Look at that. We just built a web app. So let's go from front to back. And actually, let's look at the, why don't we look at the network here too? So here's the request that our browser made. Our browser sent a request to this URL. We can tell because that's the request URL. It's a GET, and we got a 200 OK back. Awesome. And here's the response that we see on the page. We can also look at the response headers here, which aren't very interesting in this case, but in other situations, it'll be useful. But yeah, so we sent a response, we got a request, and we displayed the response. Sent a request, got a response. And on the back end here, Flask is listening. It gets our request, it looks at the URL, and our URL matches that. So it does this stuff. It uses our production model, queries it for the title, and creates a response based off of that data. We just hooked up a web server to a database. Fantastic. Yeah, get rid of that. This is fun. We'll talk about it very briefly after questions. Any questions? I don't expect any questions now because we're just walking through this and talking through it. Hopefully we'll have more questions going in tomorrow. There is one cool thing that we're going to talk about here though, and that is hooks. They are different again from React hooks, totally different thing, but basically they are things that let us do stuff before or after the request comes in, or when the request comes in before our function is hit. So I'm actually gonna put it up here. It doesn't really matter. So I'm gonna put in a it's a function on before request. And I don't think, no, we don't give it a route because it's before any request. And let's just say, yeah, we don't need to do anything special. I'm just gonna say test here. I'm just gonna have it print out some blah 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 blah. Oops. So this will actually show up on our console. So let's go back to our console here. So I'm gonna make that request again. We're gonna get back the same thing, but now we can see that this before request function actually ran before the request. So this isn't super useful right now. We'll definitely be using it when we get to authentication on Friday, maybe, or next week. Yeah, just know that it's a thing that exists and it is cool. And I'm sure there's more written about it in the curriculum. But that's all we're going to talk about today. I think this is enough. Yeah, so this is our whole application, plus all the things that we did over here. But this is the whole Flask part of the application that is listening for requests hooked up to a database and responding appropriately to those requests. And we're just going to build off of this in the next couple lectures. We're going to talk about how to make it more fully RESTful, handle different kinds of methods, and yeah, just build out from there. Yeah, hour 20, not awful. Yeah, ask me some questions about stuff we did here. Anything that's fuzzy, concept-wise?
No. I thought I had a question. I don't.
Perfect answer. Yeah, and again, it's looking at this for the first time is very confusing, I think. It's a lot of gobbledygook. It is a lot of finicky, picky stuff that, as we saw, you have a typo somewhere and nothing at all works. But, and again, like if I was a full-time Flask developer, I would probably still have to look up how to do this every time because it's like a thing that you do once for your application, and then the rest of your time is down here. So it helps me at least to kind of separate these two parts. I'll stop sharing because we are done with the code. It helps my thinking at least to separate these parts. There's the sort of like picky setup stuff, all the configuration and all that. And I include the database setup for that. Making models and seeding is a different thing. But there's the setup stuff, and then there's the actual making the application work. And I think that part is where you're going to spend most of your time. It's the most interesting to me, at least. And once you get the initial stuff set up, you don't ever need to worry about that again, unless there's errors or something. So it can be intimidating starting off. There's a lot of things that are new and basically meaningless to you at this moment. I think for that part, it's totally okay to just write the stuff, understand what the steps do, but don't sweat it too much, and focus most of your mental energy on how it gets the requests, like how to set up a route, and how you're interacting with the database and sending stuff back, because that's where the meat of everything is going to be. The rest is just boilerplate, pretty much. Yeah, I think that's all I got to say. Yeah, we've been here for a long time. Any last questions? Awesome. Thank you for listening to me babble for an hour and change. This is a lot more information dump than I wanted it to be, but there's a lot of information to dump, unfortunately. All the stuff I think is reflected in the curriculum. So go through that and get your fingers on it and practice. I'll post a recording here. You're welcome to watch at double speed and follow along and pause as necessary. And I'll post the solution branch. So all that typing is taken care of for you. Yeah, cool. If there's nothing else, I'll stop it here and I'll say goodbye to you, whoever's watching, goodbye, whoever's watching.